Welcome everybody. Nice to see you all here. Just for those people that are watching online, and for those people who've never been to an MCA board meeting before, this is always how we do our MCA board meetings, so feel free to come back in future. Genuinely, it's really lovely to see you all here, and we've got some big items on the agenda as you would expect. So there are a bunch of people watching online. We may at some point pause the live stream if there are any sort of interruptions or anything else, but otherwise there's no plans to do so, and I'll cover that in a moment. I don't intend to go around the table to do introductions, so if people could please introduce themselves when they first speak, I think that would be helpful, just so everybody knows who everybody else is. That would be great. In which case, I'm going to move swiftly on to item number 2, which is simply announcements. Since we met in June, there's been a lot going on across South Yorkshire, and I want to take a moment to update you on a few key developments, not least Liberty Steel, which I know will be of interest to people in the room, particularly Tom Hunt and Chris Reed, who share my concerns about the future of the steel industry in our region, in fact, right across the country. The recent court decision and the government's move to take control of Liberty speciality steel sites offers the first real opportunity to bring clarity for workers, for communities, and to plan a route forward for what are essentially nationally significant sites and assets. My priority, indeed the priority of Tom and Chris as well, is to protect jobs, livelihoods, and absolutely the future of the steel industry in South Yorkshire. We are proud, absolutely proud, rightly, to be the home of steel in this country. My team and I continue to engage directly with the government to ensure local voices are heard, jobs are safeguarded, and we secure a sustainable long-term future for steel in South Yorkshire. This is about far more, absolutely far more than a single company. It's about the well-being of our communities and the security of countless livelihoods that rely on that vital sector. On health, tackling health inequalities is, as it has been from day one of my top priorities, and I'm pleased to say we've made some real progress since we last met. We've signed a memorandum of understanding with Sport England and the NHS Integrated Care Board, the ICB, a commitment to boost sport and physical activity and improve health outcomes across South Yorkshire. That agreement is backed by the launch of the UK's first Sports Legacy Institute, which is a £7 million partnership between Simca and Westfield Health. I'm incredibly grateful actually to Westfield Health for the work they've done in this area. It's an ambitious project that's going to create a centre of excellence for sport and health innovation in Sheffield at the Olympic Legacy Park. It's also a magnet for inward investment, helping us to build a healthier and more prosperous region. And just last month we launched a major new report that I commissioned, Health is Wealth. It sets out a bold 10-year vision to make South Yorkshire the healthiest region in the country, which is a core ambition for me, which isn't just about the NHS, cannot just be about the NHS. It's about tackling the deep-rooted inequalities that affect everything from housing to education to employment, but hold our economy back. The report was developed by a health equity panel chaired by Professor Alan Walker, and I want to thank Alan and the panel for their outstanding work. On the My Card, proud to say that I stood alongside Steve Houghton, who's here at the table, to launch the My Card Barnsley's free bus travel pass for young people aged 18 and under, which was funded by Barnsley Council and by Simca, which is, I think, a brilliant example of what we can achieve when we work together across this region. The My Card will help young people to get to school, to college, to work, to see friends and family, and will ease the financial pressure on families, which is fundamentally important at this moment in time. We'll be looking at that impact closely, as you would expect, and my ambition is to roll that out across the whole of South Yorkshire so that every young person can travel for free on public transport in our region. And finally, I just want to speak about Orgreave, something of deep importance to our region. I was proud to host the Home Secretary on the site of the former coking plant at Orgreave, where she announced that the government will launch an inquiry into what happened there 14 long years ago. There's still a lot of work to do. 41 years ago, sorry, I should say. There's still a lot of work to do to shape and deliver the inquiry, but getting here is a huge victory for the campaigners who fought tirelessly for justice, and I want to pay tribute to those campaigners for their relentless determination, their courage, and their refusal to let this story be forgotten. Their campaign has always been about truth, about accountability and dignity, and I'm proud to stand with them. There is something about South Yorkshire and campaigners fighting for things which seems to be in our blood. Right, on to agenda item number 3, which is urgent items. I don't believe there are any urgent items. Item number 4, which are items to be considered in the absence of public and press. Officers have indicated that agenda item number 17 on the South Yorkshire Airport City contains appendices which are exempt due to containing information relating to the financial and business affairs of the MCA and, crucially, third parties. And in the circumstances, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information for the reasons set out in the report. So please do go and have a look at the report if you're curious. As set out in the agenda, members are asked to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the members during consideration of those matters, but I don't think we will be asking people to step out for that section, given the volume of information and that members have had the opportunity to discuss those materials in advance at length, so it may not be necessary. Agenda item number 5, declarations of interest by individual members in relation to any item of business on the agenda. Do you have any declarations of interest that we're not aware of? Please, Ross, if you wouldn't mind.
Any item that relates to Doncaster, being the Mayor of Doncaster.
Can I take it as a given that's the same for other members? Any other items of declarations? No? Perfect, thank you very much. Agenda item number 6 then, reports from and questions by members. I've not been made aware of any in advance of the meeting. No? Receipt of petitions. I've not been made aware of any in advance of the meeting. No. Which takes us on to item number 8, which is public questions. Now, what I'm intending to do, there are a number of questions, but a number of those are in relation to DSA, so I'm going to save those questions for that moment on the agenda, so we deal with those all at once. So there's only one question, I believe, which is not relating to DSA today. So if I could ask for that question to be read on that person's behalf, and then I will endeavour to answer it.
Thank you, Chair. The question is there a time frame for the rollout of digital display boards with live tram times on tram stops that do not yet have them?
Thank you. That question was asked by Councillor Minesh Parekh, who's not in attendance today. So thank you, Councillor Parekh, for your question. In July, we signed a contract with Hitachi to strategically upgrade technology across the Supertram network. The first outcome of that contract will be to replace the current timetable management software, which prevents, at the moment, live times being displayed at tram stops consistently. We anticipate that will be completed within a 2-year time frame to make sure that live times are displayed at tram stops and also provided to websites, apps and other data consumers. In regards to tram stops currently without displays, which is also a bugbear of mine, our current strategy will be to upgrade all tram stops on the network through the mass transit project, subject to successful business case approval from the Department for Transport, and we anticipate works will commence after 2027. Upon completion, all tram stops will have live time displays. It's a constant bugbear of mine that we can't provide that information in a more up-to-date fashion, so I'm pleased to see that there is progress being made there. As I say, there are other questions, but I will deal with these as we get to the agenda item number 17 on DSA. So that takes us to agenda item number 9, which is minutes of the previous meeting. Leaders are asked to approve the minutes from the meeting held on the 24th of June. Do leaders agree that the minutes are a true and accurate account? Any objections? Nope. Fantastic. Thank you. Which takes us on to the first substantive item, which is item number 10, Skills and Employment Report. Steve, this is your substantive item. Is there anything you want to add before we get Tom to introduce the item?
Just to say, Chair, we've got the South Yorkshire Skills Strategy implementation plan with us. The Get South Yorkshire Working Plan, which is alongside the Get Britain Working Plan that the government's introduced, but also the Adult Skills Fund commissioning approach for future years. So all these things integrate together. The key bit in terms of the skills plan, there are 3 key missions in there. First of all, to move those farthest away from the labour market into work. Secondly, to raise the attainment of core skills and knowledge, which is something employers are very keen on. And thirdly, to increase the supply of highly skilled people within South Yorkshire. The key being here the focus of the skills plan will be on the individual, if I can say it, as opposed to where it's been perhaps a bit more business focused and trying to predict what business needs will be into the future, which, as we all know, is incredibly difficult. So getting the right people in the right place seems to be the business priority, and obviously it is for the individuals themselves. So a lot in this, but we do believe this is a significant step forward from where we've been previously with the skills agenda, and we look forward to delivering it.
Thank you. Can I ask Tom Bousfield to please introduce the paper?
Yes, so just in addition to what Sir Steve has presented there, we're asking for the approval of 3 plans, which is the Skills Implementation Plan, the Get South Yorkshire Working Plan, and our Adult Skills, our renewed approach to commissioning. And then on the 4th item, a single employer support service, which brings together 2 existing programmes, the Skills Bank and the Apprenticeship Hub. We're asking for funding from the MCA of £7.5 million in order to fund that service and the programmes that it will deliver.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Tom or for Steve? I know there's been a huge amount of conversation about this in advance of the meeting, but does anybody have any questions for Tom or Steve on this agenda item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Tom Hunt. I'm the leader of Sheffield City Council. Not really a question, but I think just worth remarking on the Pathways to Work programme, which came out of the Pathways to Work Commission that Barnsley led, and this is a really innovative approach being developed in South Yorkshire, where rather than saying to people who are economically inactive, out of work, you must go and do X, Y, or Z, it's really in taking the time to understand their own individual circumstances and how we can work as a system and as leaders and authorities to remove those barriers, whatever they may be, for that individual. And it's now being taken by government as the approach that they want to be seeing. So it's a good example of how South Yorkshire is really leading the way, developing innovative policy solutions to help some of those challenges we will face. How do we get more people back into work? So I think it's a good report. Very happy to support today.
Thanks, Tom. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay. In which case, could I ask that leaders and the board accepts the recommendations as set out in the paper? Everybody agreed? Fantastic, thank you. In which case, moving on to item number 11, which is the walking, wheeling and cycling strategy, something absolutely close to my heart. And that is going to be presented by our brilliant active Lives Commissioner, Ed Clancy, as he is now, Yorkshire's most successful Olympian, we are proud to be able to say, as our Active Lives Commissioner. Ed, could I please bring you in?
Thanks, Oliver. And I'm just here with Nicola Marshall, who's our Active Lives and Safer Roads Director as well. Thanks, Oliver. So, this is the main event, the walking, wheeling, cycling strategy for South Yorkshire. Now, first of all, I just want to say some big thank yous to your teams, first of all. You know, they've been invaluable in shaping this strategy, and thanks to your teams for welcoming me into this new world. The way we've built this strategy in this collaborative way, I believe, is unique, and we didn't choose to do it the easy way, but I believe we've chosen to do it the right way for the people of South Yorkshire. I'd like to thank everyone around this table as well for welcoming me into the world and for helping shape the ambition for this strategy. Now, this shared ambition became clear. We want to achieve 3 things. First of all, we want to help growth in South Yorkshire in an inclusive and sustainable way. Secondly, we want to move towards being the healthiest region in the country. And the third point is we want to make our neighbourhoods, villages, towns and cities better places for the proud people of South Yorkshire and for our children to grow up in safety. So that's why this strategy exists. In terms of the operational elements that I just want to highlight, there's 3 things again. First of all, community engagement. I really believe in this idea that change moves at the speed of trust in any walk of life. And I really believe that in terms of walking, wheeling and cycling as well. I've met thousands of people, tens of thousands of people perhaps over the last 2 years. And almost everyone I meet says they want to walk, wheel, cycle a little bit more. And whilst that might seem like a small thing, I've seen firsthand the positive impact that it has on people's lives. Just a couple of weeks ago, myself and Nicola, we met a small girl at a school in Rotherham, and we asked her what her best day at school was. She said nothing about the Olympian. It was the days she gets to walk to school with her dad. About a year ago, I met a brave fella at a bike recycling centre in Barnsley. Talk about social mobility, social cohesion. The humble bikes got him to jobs, opportunity, new friendship circles. Again, about a year ago, we met a nice old couple called Susan and Barry. Now, Barry's in a wheelchair, and for years he could only look at the beautiful green and blue surroundings that we all know and love in South Yorkshire. And thankfully, the trail's been resurfaced, it's been made accessible. There's been over a 400% increase in usage on that part of the trail. Susan and Barry get to enjoy the great outdoors. I like that, and I like the fact that every single picture, every single quote in this strategy is real. There's no stock images, there's no manufactured quotes. The people of South Yorkshire really have helped shape this strategy, and we want that sentiment to continue, whether we're talking about the building work, the infrastructure, or the software projects. We want that to be led and guided by the communities. In terms of a focus of this strategy, we want to think about the people that are often left out and left behind. These people have got the most to gain, and again, that's a sentiment that's been kindly endorsed by the esteemed Professor Chris Whitty. Now, I know he believes in this idea that getting people that are doing the least activity to doing a little bit more, that's where we should be placing our resource, and that's what this strategy is about. Second element that I want to touch on quickly is safer neighbourhoods. This came out so strongly in all of our early conversations with the leaders, the elected members, the community groups, children in schools. Simply put, people want neighbourhoods where their kids feel safe to play out. I think some of us in this room might remember the days when we could walk to school safely and ride our bikes. Not just about children, everyone's got the right to get to where they want to go safely, whether that's the shops, the local park, the doctor's surgery, or indeed other public transport links. Which brings me on to the final element, which is routes to opportunities. I know how important this integrated transport system is for everyone around this table. And all the conversations I have about walking, wheeling and cycling are very much about tram, train and especially bus. Again, in other words, we're trying to help people get to jobs and opportunities to help build our economy. As mentioned, everyone's journey starts at their front door, and a major priority of this strategy is how we can help people walk and wheel to public transport stops, and feel safe while they wait there. It's also important we help people feel more confident cycling too. I've met loads of people who really value the choice of being able to get around on bikes gives them. Finally, in terms of impact, if we get this right and we can meet the targets we've set out to achieve, there'll be tens of thousands of people moving a little bit more across South Yorkshire. But the best stat for me, which really brings it to life, is that we'll add 40,000 healthy years to the lives of people of South Yorkshire. And of course, that'll ease pressure on GPs. It'll save nearly £100 million over the next decade. And if we can move just a small percentage of short trips to active or public transport, we'll cut 8,000 tonnes of CO2 and unlock another £100 million in financial return. Though finally from me, this has been a new world for me, and I've come from sport, as you mentioned, but I've really enjoyed this, and perhaps not coming from a transport background's been useful, because I've only ever seen this as trying to have a positive result on the people of South Yorkshire. Like that young girl in Rotherham, like the young fella on the recycled bike in Barnsley, Susan and Barry in Doncaster. This strategy is about opportunity, health and pride in our communities. Thanks everyone, I'm looking forward to cracking on.
Thanks Ed. Nicola, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, we're excited to crack on.
Fantastic, thank you. Are there any comments or questions about the walking, wheeling and cycling strategy? Yes, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Chris Reid, Rotherham Council. Thank you, Ed. I just wanted to place on the record my thanks to Ed in particular for the work that he's done on the strategy. You've referred to Ed. We brought you into our world of men in suits who sit round desks, and as you know, they don't normally look like this, but every now and again. And what you did was you brought a real passion and commitment for this subject matter, but you absolutely rose to the challenge we set you of. Go and talk to our residents. Go and meet the people who live in our communities and learn not just the theory of this stuff and the funding streams and all the other things I know you've enjoyed getting to grips with, but how do people feel about it? And for me, that part in the recommendations of the report we're facing today about neighbourhoods, about the look and feel of them, about how people are able to engage with them, if we can crack that over time, that's the thing that makes the big difference. Now, I know we all think cars are brilliant, but cars can't be everything. And we've got to a point where people are dependent on their cars to get from their own front door to the shop next door almost. So how we build communities where people are able to make positive choices, to lead healthy and active lives, and to just do, as you say, that extra little bit that actually makes a real difference to them is absolutely essential. And that people feel that that is something they are part of and benefiting from, rather than something that's done to them. And I think you've articulated that brilliantly. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Tom, I think you want to.
Yeah, thank you. Let me also place on the record thanks to you, Ed, for the work that you've done over the last couple of years. It's been a real joy to work with you, and this is an excellent plan that I'm looking forward to voting for. This morning I was at a school assembly in Sheffield talking about road safety and how children had got to school. Most had either walked or come by car. One person had cycled and one person had scooted, but quite a lot of them had wanted to be able to walk or travel more actively if they could. And so I think it shows that there's real appetite for this. The points I wanted to make were two. One is that it's now our task as political leaders to make sure that this strategy receives the funding that it needs, and so we'll need to balance that against other competing pressures in the world of transport. But secondly as well, that it's important that we don't set this against other forms of transport. It's not active travel versus roads versus buses. They're all connected. It would be so much better for a lot of people if they were able to walk to a bus stop. And that would be a good form of active travel if then there was a reliable bus service that they could get, rather than having to rely on private cars or taxis. So it's about, the important thing is that we see this as connected to everything else we're trying to do, improving public transport and our road network in South Yorkshire. So, no, just thank you for the work that you've done.
Brilliant, thank you. The South Yorkshire Walking, Wheeling and Cycling Strategy sets out our ambition to give people more choice, as Tom says, in how they move around the region. The strategy has been co-designed with me, the local authorities and, most importantly, our communities and other stakeholders. It outlines a vision, a mission and 3 priorities for the work, with 6 key outcomes and targets for each to 2035. It sets out our overall approach to how we will work across the region and highlights our emerging models of work to develop safer neighbourhoods and build routes to opportunities that are integrated with other modes of transport. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done to get us to this point. Our leaders all agreed that we take the recommendation of the paper. Yes. Thank you very much. I'm always impressed by how much media and press follow Ed around, but today he has excelled himself, so thank you for bringing them all with you, Ed. I appreciate it. On to item number 12, which is the Local Remediation Acceleration Plan. This is an item that's going to be introduced by Tom Basfield.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to place on record my thanks to Colin and his team for preparing this. So, post the Grenfell tragedy, the government asked the Mayoral combined authorities to prepare a local remediation acceleration plan. It's important just to emphasise that we have no legal powers or funding in this space, but have just convened the regulators, including the South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service. What we've done is look at the state of cladding and on all buildings that are 18 metres and above, and are beginning a process of assessment for those buildings that are 11 metres and above. But there is an ongoing capacity challenge within the MCA and within the Fire and Rescue Service of assessors in order to deliver that. We ask that the board approve the plan as set out, the publication of the plan, and also note the current position on remediation activity within South Yorkshire.
Thank you, Tom. Particularly your point around the responsibilities but not necessarily the powers is, I think, a really important one. Do leaders or members of the board have any comments or questions? I know we've spoken about this before. Anything else to bring in? Yes, Tom.
Just to note the resourcing challenge, and I think in all of our conversations with central government, we need to be making the point that we need to make sure that buildings are made safe, but that's going to require resource. And so I think on all of us, local leaders, mayors, members of parliament, we need to be making sure that that is adequately resourced.
Thank you. Also worth given the number of people that will be watching this, putting on record our tributes to the families at Grenfell and what they went through that have led us to this point. Okay, could I ask that the members of the board accept the recommendations in the paper? Everybody agreed? Yeah, fantastic, thank you. Okay, in which case on to item number 13, which is the investment zone. And we're hearing again from Tom. I promise you we do have other officers who work at the MCA, but Tom's doing all of the work, it seems. So Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the South Yorkshire Investment Zone, the first in the country. I'd just like to place on record my thanks to Joseph Quinn and his team that have pulled this together. We haven't had long-term funding certainty from the government until now. So we've approached our investment zone in a flexible way, investing in fast-growing companies in the region, but also the infrastructure that they need in order to grow. Through the next phase, and particularly this year, we think just to enable faster decision-making, we're asking for 3 delegations, and they are that strategic projects with value over 500,000 for major capital and strategic interventions will still come to the MCA board for approval as other schemes have done. Below that, however, we've got two programmes. One is for innovation and growth for high growth companies for 500,000 and under. Another test and learn, a pilot approach where we want to try different things to achieve the outcomes we've set out to make South Yorkshire the best place to start, scale or relocate a business in the investment zone of 250,000, and we're asking both of those to be delegated decisions to the head of paid service.
Thank you, Tom. Worth saying, isn't it? UK's first investment zone. Very proud of that. We're sitting on part of the investment zone right now and a huge part of our plans going forward. So really proud to have taken this work to this stage. Any comments or questions from members of the board? Yes, Ross.
I'm delighted to see that government has actually realised that we need multi-year investment. Single investment year on year does not enhance proper value for money. So I'm delighted that government has seen this and actually we can go ahead now with schemes that will deliver over multi-years.
Fantastic. Any other comments or questions from members of the board? No? In which case, could I ask that members accept the recommendations as laid out in the paper? Members agreed? Yes. Fantastic. Thank you. On to agenda item number 14 then, which is the 26-27 budget development. We've got a new member of the team, Gareth, coming onto the pitch.
Thank you, Mayor. Gareth Slatton, I'm the Exec Director, Resources and Investment and Chief Finance Officer. Mayor, this is a simple budget development report setting out some of the risks and opportunity ahead of the forthcoming new financial year. I draw members' attention to the potential loss of some funding, but the opportunities generated from stronger Treasury management performance. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any last-minute questions for Gareth about the paper? No. I recognise we've had significant conversations about this today, as you would expect. So could I ask that members accept the recommendations as laid out in the paper? Are members agreed? Agreed. Fantastic. Thank you. On to agenda item number 15 then, which is the Delegated Authority Report from our Chief Exec, Catherine Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. This will be a familiar report to members of the board. It shows the large amount of activity that's happened since the last time we met. It's for members to note. I don't have a particular decision to bring to the board's attention.
Thank you. In which case, can I ask that the board note the decisions and delegations made? Yes, thank you. On to agenda item number 16, which is the performance update and approvals from Laurie Thomas.
Hi, good afternoon. Laurie Thomas, Director of Programme Delivery at Simco. This paper brings for the first time the programme approvals and the programme performance update, which covers Q1. The report seeks progression of 2 transport schemes in Barnsley, the Dartmoor Connectivity and the A628 bus stop improvement scheme. It also seeks approval for change requests relating to our major transport programmes. There is a request to release gain share funding from the Barnsley allocation in order to increase the project feasibility fund. There is a change relating to the adult skills and free courses for jobs, relating to simplification of residency requirements for non-devolved funding. The report also picks up a Brownfield Housing Fund projects. As members know, there was a 12.3 million allocation in year additional to our previous allocation, and so the report seeks endorsement for a number of schemes to be added to the pipeline to delegate authority to the head of paid service on completion of the assessment and of those business cases to actually move those into delivery. The report seeks progression of both the Investment Zone Enhancement Fund and the Consolidated Active Travel Fund to full approval and onward disbursement. And finally, there's a request in there to accept 5 grants, totalling just over £13 million.
Fantastic. Thank you, Laurie. Are there any questions or comments for Laurie on the paper? Tom.
Yeah, thank you. I really welcome this. I think a couple of points just to pull out. I think the Brownfield Housing Fund is really important. We know that we've got significant brownfield sites across our towns and cities and South Yorkshire, and funding like this will be so important to unlock those and help us to build more homes on those brownfield sites. I really welcome the Arts Council funding that's outlined in the report. We're developing a really ambitious cultural and creative industries framework for South Yorkshire, and the funding from South Yorkshire, from the Arts Council, will help us to deliver that. And then, Mayor, the last point I just wanted to raise was around the UK Shared Prosperity funding. I think all of us as council leaders know the importance of that in our places, and it's really critical over the coming weeks, really, that we work together to come up with a solution for how we can continue to support that work so that we don't reach a cliff edge later in this financial year.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments or questions for Laurie? No? Okay, in which case can I ask that the board accepts the recommendations in the paper? All agreed? Thank you. And that brings us to the closing. No, I'm kidding. Okay, on to agenda item number 17, which is South Yorkshire Airport City. I need to remind everyone before we go into that next item on South Yorkshire Airport City that it is partially exempt due to commercially sensitive information, which I'm sure you all understand. Therefore, please be aware that the board members might move into a private session should any matters covered by the exemption need to be discussed. And if that does happen, we'll exit to another room and then return for the public session, and we'll pause the live stream. After the report has been introduced, we'll start by discussing the open material, and then if members do indicate they wish to discuss anything that is commercially confidential, we will move into that private session. I'm not expecting that to happen, but just to let you know that that is something that could happen. So, since DSA is closed, you will know, everybody in this room will know, that we have worked tirelessly to reopen our airport. That's led to the acquisition of the land and assets by the City of Doncaster Council, the commencement of the regulatory process for the reinstatement of airspace, the appointment of Munich International Airport as consultants to fly Doncaster, the airport operator, and the award of over £16 million in MCA funding to support site holding costs, preparations work, operational activity and business case development here at the airport. We've also set a vision which sees the reopened airport as an anchor for the development of the wider Gateway East site as an advanced industries hub, particularly focused on sustainable aviation. This would build upon core regional strengths, which are incredibly important, propagating the success of the region's Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District, the AMID, and reconnecting the region to global markets. The vision would see the creation of good, well-paid jobs, allowing South Yorkshire residents, people who live here, our friends and our neighbours, to stay near and go far. This report notes the outcome of the comprehensive assurance activity on the project, and additional work has been undertaken to support the board in our decision-making. And the report concludes that the strategic vision is well aligned to regional and national growth priorities, whilst the core vision of an airport anchoring wider development here at Gateway East is considered achievable, albeit with the need for broader investment. It also recognises the many challenges such as increased carbon emissions, mobility to and from the airport, and risks associated with the lease between CDC and Peel. So that is where we are. I'm really pleased to be able to be here. In fact, I'm really proud to be able to be here with my colleagues and friends around this table, because it has taken no shortage of work to get to this point, and it was never inevitable that we would get here. So this is an incredibly important moment. We will have a discussion as a board after hearing from Gareth about the paper itself. But before I do that, I just wanted to bring in my colleague and friend Ros Jones in to be able to express her feelings about this paper.
Colleagues, the decision before us today is set to be the largest single investment in Doncaster in more than a generation, with the economic impacts reaching all our communities across South Yorkshire and further afield. It is an investment in our economy. It's an investment in our businesses. It is an investment in our jobs and skills. This is an investment that will increase trade, export and growth for Doncaster and South Yorkshire through global connectivity, putting Doncaster and South Yorkshire on the map, regionally, nationally and internationally. That is why reopening our airport remains my #1 priority. We have had to adapt and evolve this project over the last few years, but all with single underlying aim of delivering a fully functioning airport and sound investment for Doncaster and the wider region. I will, of course, be voting in favour of the decision for approval. Fellow South Yorkshire leaders, we have discussed, scrutinised and assured every inch of this project, but today is the day to give the green light to take off, forget the pun, and see Doncaster Sheffield Airport fully reopened once again. Thank you, colleagues.
That might not be the last airport pun we hear today. I'm afraid I've got 3 public questions which I forgot to go through, which I was supposed to. So let me go back to the public questions before we hear from Gareth. We've got a question from Michael Regan, who's not in attendance today, so the question will be read out on their behalf.
The Mayor announced an independent inquiry into strategic infrastructure in February 23. One direction was it should consider the case for reforms that would increase the influence of democratically elected representatives, including council leaders and mayors. A November Freedom of Information response stated that the report would be published no later than the 1st of February 25. A further FOI in April responded publication being delayed until discussions in relation to South Yorkshire Airport City are concluded. Has the full report been provided to parties and investment discussions concerning the airport? And when will the full report be made publicly available?
Thank you. Could I ask you just to speak up a little bit as well, just so I can hear them properly? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Regan, for your question regarding the independent inquiry into strategic infrastructure. I've got no doubt you're watching online. In 2022, the announcement of the intention to close DSA, I think it's fair to say, sent shockwaves around South Yorkshire, and despite the best efforts of public sector partners, not least clearly around the table, to keep the airport open, we were unable to do so, as I think we are all aware. The inquiry was established to review and propose reforms in the regulatory, policy and legal framework governing the management of regional assets, and specifically it was designed to prevent or mitigate scenarios similar to the closure of DSA happening again. It's an important piece of work, and I'm very grateful to the Chair for undertaking it. And in usual circumstances, we would have published the report by now. However, the terms of reference to the inquiry made it clear that it should avoid any actions that could prejudice ongoing legal and commercial negotiations surrounding DSA. On that basis, the original timeline for the inquiry and further updates on an intended publication date have been pushed back to ensure that these align with the decision being taken at today's meeting. So I appreciate the question, but also thank you for your patience. I acknowledge the significance of your concerns, and those findings are absolutely important, and they are intended to inform both national and regional governments' approaches to major infrastructure assets, as was the purpose. Our goal is to ensure that future decisions regarding strategic regional assets, just like DSA, are made with comprehensive stakeholder input and due consideration of their broader economic and community assets. Essentially, our community was up in arms about that decision, and yet there was nothing we could do about it, and that's what the inquiry is intended to rectify. So thank you once again for your questions. We value your input and are committed to maintaining that transparent dialogue, particularly about this piece of work. So thank you. We have another question, please, which I believe has been submitted by Wai Ming Yao, who's not in attendance today, but I believe will be watching online. So the question will be read out on their behalf.
Mayor Coppard, your own due diligence shows this airport is unaffordable in all base scenarios and only breaks even if the most optimistic freight and property forecasts are hit. Given there are no signed freight operators, no binding airline commitments and a funding gap already stretched by inflation, can you explain to taxpayers why this isn't simply a logistics property gamble dressed up as an airport revival? And what guarantees you can give that this won't become an open-ended public subsidy sink? The assurance review makes clear that the current business case does not yet satisfy Treasury's Green Book standards or the 5-case model. Only the strategic case would meet the guidelines, with the financial and commercial case reg-rated. Red, it is not affordable even in the high case scenario. In light of this, will the board commit to introducing additional gateways or governance with clear stop-go decisions points linked to operator commitments, freight volumes and regulatory milestones before further public money is released? Furthermore, the head lease performance clause remains tied to passenger volumes, including a 2036 threshold that even the high case forecasts fall short of, and nearly 2 million, it is higher than any annual passenger traffic ever achieved at DSA. Given that freight ultimately determine the airport's viability, will you commit to renegotiating this clause so that it is freight-focused and realistically achievable rather than exposing the region to risk or lease termination? The due diligence mentions an operator with demonstrable UK regional airport experience and strong pre-existing relationships with airlines and freight integrators. In light of those concerns, can the board confirm it is committed to Munich, or is it actively considering a live work stream for a competitive search?
So there's a lot of questions in there, but thank you for those questions. Following the assessment of the full business case, the MCA commissioned a number of additional pieces of work, and frankly I don't agree with the interpretation of that work that was laid out in that question. But as outlined in the board paper, that work included a review of the financial and business models, a more detailed sensitivity analysis of the economic case, work to test the market appetite for the proposal, and a review of the lease conditionality. And that additional work has gone into great depth over many, many months, as I think people are aware, and supplements the information received within the full business case. The work has sought to mitigate as many of the risks as possible, but with a project of this size and this complexity, risks will always remain, and I think we've been very upfront about that. The additional work means that an informed decision can now be taken which balances those risks, of which there are a number, alongside the incredible opportunity, huge opportunity that the project can realise for the whole of South Yorkshire, and we've always been very clear about that. As you'd expect, I'm unable to provide details relating to airlines or to cargo operators, as those are subject to ongoing commercial discussions. The landowner has engaged productively in renegotiating the lease threshold such that risk is sufficiently mitigated to proceed, and I'm grateful to the landowner for that. Throughout the additional assurance period, I've considered options such as phased funding approvals, akin to your suggestion of stop-go decision points. However, that approach could be counterproductive and reduce long-term certainty over the future of the airport, and therefore reduce the confidence in airlines to commit to operating from DSA, which I think we all want to see. Munich Airports International are appointed by Fly Doncaster and will continue to work with them to operationalise the airport. The report recommendation seeks to confirm the overarching programme management function required to deliver such a complex programme of activity. So thank you for your question. We next have a question from Jenny Harrison, who is not in attendance today, so the question will be read out on their behalf.
In your papers, it says that airport operators walked away from the competition after looking at the lease. Does this suggest that the airport lease is too expensive? Doncaster Sheffield Airport's viability rests almost entirely on ambitious freight and property forecasts, yet no freight operator has signed a binding agreement. How do you justify committing up to 160 million of public money to an airport that could still operate at a loss for years if freight demand is slow to materialise? And what guarantees do you give that taxpayers won't be left subsidising empty runways? Independent auditors have warned that passenger forecasts are optimistic. Subsidies will be required to attract airlines, and even in the high case, Doncaster will struggle to meet leased passenger targets. How can you reassure the public that this isn't just a political promise to restore flights that the market cannot support? And what is your threshold for walking away if passenger numbers flatline, rather than asking taxpayers to bankroll loss-making routes indefinitely in pursuit of an unrealistic vision?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Again, probably worth me saying I don't agree with the premise of that question, and I'm unable to comment, as people might understand, on the commercial reasons for potential airport operators not submitting bids, but we have subsequently engaged productively in renegotiating the lease with the landowner, as I've already described, which we anticipate will reduce risks, and that could have potentially dissuaded private investment into the airport. In terms of targets for freight and property, as part of the additional assurance work we've completed since the original submission of the bid, we've sought specific advice from aviation experts to confirm that the revised targets for the airport are achievable. These estimates also include passenger numbers, which are a key part of the viability of the airport. Those projections have specifically taken into account the potential impacts of competition, as you'd expect from neighbouring airports such as Manchester, Leeds, Bradford and East Midlands. Due to their commercially sensitive nature, it's not possible to talk about specific thresholds for performance of the airport in terms of passengers or freight. However, it should be noted that comprehensive performance monitoring will be in place, which will provide the robust data to inform any future decision-making should it be required. And I would also just add, because this question has come up a number of times, about the political imperative to reopen the airport, and I can only speak from my own personal position and decision, but I think it is absolutely right that we listen to our communities when our communities, they say they want us to do something. And I make no bones about the fact that we have listened to the communities of Doncaster to get to this point today, and I have certainly listened to the communities of Doncaster and the whole of South Yorkshire as I have thought about my position on this matter throughout the last 3 years. So thank you very much for your question. Right, can I hand over please to Gareth? Thank you very much. Can I please hand over to Gareth, who will talk us through the paper itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very conscious that much of the analysis has just been explained, so I'll keep this simple. So as part of our due diligence exercise, we undertake what we call assurance work. That assurance work tests business cases and serves to inform the decisions of this board. Over the last months, we've been working diligently with colleagues in Doncaster and beyond to undertake that work. We've commissioned expert independent aviation advice to test traffic forecasts and to test, retest and rebuild financial models. We've tested the programme plan for the return of aviation to this airport and used that to allow us to settle on a timeline. We've commissioned a lease advisory firm to test the superior head lease and the risk inherent in that identified previously. We've commissioned feasibility work to test the strategic objective of developing Gateway East out as an advanced industries hub. We've reviewed the methodology to calculate the economic gain as presented within the full business case, and we've commissioned a climate impact report such that we can look squarely in the face the impact of a return of aviation on our net zero plans. We've further explored the opportunity for sustainability opportunities, looking at best practice across other UK airports, and we've prepared a surface access statement to avoid us repeating mistakes of the past where growth opportunities outstrip public transport coverage. We've commissioned a review into skills and employment challenges, and we've also undertaken an inequalities impact assessment. Mayor, we've conducted an awful lot of work over the last few months, and I'm prepared to put forward these proposals to the board. So our identification of the work suggests that there is a strong strategic fit with our plan for good growth, our strategic economic plan and our investment zone prospectus. Our work has outlined that the Gateway East opportunity is technically feasible and that there is strong market appetite. We believe that the development could see the creation of thousands of good, well-paid jobs, but we do understand that there will be ongoing requirement for infrastructure investment. And our work on the climate impact report does set out the impacts on our net zero plans. We have undertaken further work on traffic forecasts and then remodelled the financial plan for the airport. That suggests that there is a route to affordability, but they do exist within higher traffic scenarios. Our advisors are clear that these scenarios are achievable, but require the company to achieve operational and management excellence. We do believe that there are mitigations against adverse financial performance, particularly around the retention of business rates that would accrue on the Gateway East opportunity site. Risks highlighted around the lease are real and they are compounded by revised traffic forecasts. However, we have undertaken significant engagement with the landowner in recent weeks, and that engagement has been positive. Surface access connectivity to the airport remains a challenge, particularly around Junction 3 of the M18 and the currently poor public transport connections. But mitigations do exist, and we have prepared a surface access statement to ensure that we can connect people to opportunity and that we can align the benefits of public ownership of the transport network through a bus franchise model and ownership of the tram network to ensure that we properly connect the people across South Yorkshire to the opportunities that this project would represent. The report recognises that recruiting experience and expertise and then maintaining a talent pipeline will be a condition of success. We're excited about the opportunities to connect people to those opportunities through our regional skills and employment programmes. I particularly draw members' attention to the Equalities Impact Assessment and the complex balance of benefits and disbenefits shown. And finally, our testing of the economic benefits suggests that whilst initial estimates were considered optimistic, the project's benefit-cost ratio is still considered to provide good value for money. I draw the Board's attention to the risks that are noted within the report, including the finalisation of lease negotiation, ongoing work around airspace reinstatement, and the potential of legal challenge around public subsidy. These risks sit alongside inherent commercial risk. That is risk that is inherent to any complex commercial endeavour of this kind. In support of the management of these risks, we propose a number of conditions precedent and contractual controls. Those conditions precedent set out the requirements for the release of funding and support the MCA's management of its risk and its ongoing ability to support this project to thrive. So in consideration of these findings, the report presents a number of options. And our proposal is that, subject to the approval of the conditions precedent and the controls, that we recommend the approval of the project and the award of funding. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to open up to questions for Gareth, but before I do that, because I'm also going to ask members to make clear their intention about how they intend to vote and explain their rationale around the table, but before I do that, it seems only fair for me to make clear my own rationale and how I intend to vote, because I've been engaged in this conversation with you for the last 3 years and been working with the team around this table to better understand both what the risks and the challenges and indeed the opportunities look like in this space. And as a result of all of those conversations and conversations with you, I'm intending to vote in favour of reopening DSA with the funding that we want to commit. And I want to do that whilst trying to balance two inherent things that I have to in my job. One, to try and protect taxpayers' money, to make the best possible use of taxpayers' money that is entrusted to us as a combined authority and to me as Mayor, but at the same time to create opportunities, huge opportunities for the people of South Yorkshire, everybody across South Yorkshire. And I think that this investment here at DSA and at Gateway East is the biggest single opportunity we have in front of us right now to create opportunity that I think we all want to see for our communities, particularly when it comes to good jobs in the industries of the future, so that young people in particular, some of whom are in this audience right now, can stay near and go far, can absolutely have those jobs that we all know they deserve, and that families in our communities can't just go on holiday more easily, which is absolutely important, but have the opportunities that they deserve to get on with their lives, to have great holidays, but also to be able to pay their bills, to be able to create the sort of future for their families that we all want them to have. And that's why I think this project is so fundamentally important. And I recognise the risks, of course I do, but it is incumbent upon us to try and balance that with that huge opportunity in front of us. And that's why I intend to vote in support of the airport project, that long-term commitment to create those good jobs of the future here in Doncaster and across South Yorkshire. Can I ask other people if they have questions for Gareth or comments for Gareth, but then also to indicate how they might be thinking about this vote as well? Thank you very much. Who would like to come in? Steve.
Thanks, Oliver. I have no questions here today, and the reason I have no questions is prior to today there have been a series of meetings between officers from Barnsley and myself with the MCA and with Doncaster to raise a range of issues to get satisfaction on those questions that we had. And I'm pleased to say we've got that. That included obviously the risk overall that's contained within the proposal, but obviously the management of that risk so we can get on top of that moving forward. The financial impact of this, not just in terms of the MCA, but the individual districts. Pleased to say, most of that we are immune from because of the way this has been done. So I congratulate the MCA and Doncaster for the way they've approached that. Gareth has picked up the lease. There have been some concerns in the past around that, which we're now satisfied they have been sorted to our satisfaction, and obviously things like the forecast usage and the income and so on, that we believe those are achievable. So having had those questions answered, then looked at the benefits, because clearly the economic benefits potentially are substantial. I'm sure the people of Barnsley will welcome the airport reopening. I'm not sure about the economic benefits, but they certainly want to go on the holidays from Doncaster, they keep telling me. But our approach is to look at that wider economic impact and the benefit, not just to South Yorkshire, but to our borough as well. So we will be supporting the project here today. And I do want to thank all the team and everybody who's worked on this. because it's been a real team effort and it's not been easy to do that. But I want to pay tribute to Ros Jones, because when the airport first closed, her instincts were we've got to get this reopened. And I have to say there was huge scepticism about that this could ever be brought about. And when others didn't believe and people like me were sceptical, Ros kept believing and kept pushing. And it's in no small way, in fact the majority of way, is down to Ros Jones making this happen. So I want to pay tribute to Ros and her officers, and to Damien, who's worked alongside her, for getting to this point, because it has not just been without commercial or economic or financial risk, political risk as well, and reputational risk that they've been prepared to take on. And they deserve all our support, and congratulations for that. So well done to them. And just to say, Barnsley, having had all our questions answered, are happy to support the proposal.
Thank you. Chris, could I ask you to come in? Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. I think Steve has outlined the journey that we've all been on and the assurance that we've all had over the course of the last few months about this proposal. So I won't reiterate that. Clearly, this is a huge asset for the South Yorkshire economy, with enormous potential for driving forward jobs and opportunities for people in our region, and that benefit will be felt far beyond Doncaster. So I am satisfied on that basis, and on the basis of the conversations we've had over recent weeks and months, that this is a appropriate use of public money and a wise thing for us to do to take forward the South Yorkshire economy. But I wanted to just extend Steve's comments a little bit about the political environment in which this decision is being taken, because we live in a time where there is minute-by-minute commentary on the decisions that we take and the way that we hold ourselves in public office. And actually, Ros has shown exemplary leadership through that period of time, because none of this is easy. It was not in any way inevitable that we would be here today making this decision. We can only do that because of the leadership that Ros and Doncaster Council have provided, because of the way that you've taken forward your role as South Yorkshire's Mayor to enable that, to look at what are all the feasible ways that we could proceed and to weigh those risks. And because of the way that Gareth and his team of your officers at the MCA have then taken their responsibilities so seriously, to weigh those risks, to look at the pros and cons, to work with us as politicians, and to look at credible, serious ways that we can facilitate economic growth in South Yorkshire. So a huge round of applause from me to Gareth and the team, and to all of you for the work that you've done on what is a big day for South Yorkshire.
Thank you, Chris. Tom, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I welcome today's decision. I've spent time in Doncaster this year, and I know how important reopening Doncaster Sheffield Airport is to so many people. It's a really proud place with big ambitions for economic growth and jobs right here in South Yorkshire. And today I'll be voting to support those ambitions and voting to reopen the airport. And like others, I pay tribute to Mayor Ros Jones and also to Oliver and the teams for their campaigning, and many people in the room for their campaigning. Because this is such an important decision, it was essential that time was taken to make sure that the business case was tested and was right. And I'd like to thank Gareth and the team at the Mayoral Combined Authority for their work with Doncaster to go through that assurance process, to really test the business case so that we as board members were able to make an informed decision today. And I'm pleased that that external expertise was brought in to help provide that. In supporting the investment, there's a few points that I would like to highlight. And it picks up some of what Gareth has already said. I do think it's essential that the team at DSA learn from best practice by airports and airlines around the world to make sure that this airport is as sustainable as possible. Air travel, as it currently operates, does clearly create carbon emissions, but there is much that can be done to reduce those emissions. So I welcome the potential for working with and potentially incentivising airlines that are early adopters of sustainable aviation fuel and more efficient aviation technology, and I'd really encourage that this is explored from a very early stage. I'd strongly encourage that early work takes place on how this whole airport and Gateway East can be decarbonised using as much renewable energy as possible. Massive potential on a big site for heat pumps and for solar capture. And as Gareth has said, I think I'd stress the imperative that public transport to the airport and to Gateway East is improved in order to reduce carbon emissions travelling to and from the airport. This will not only help improve the sustainability of the airport, but make it a much more attractive place to fly from and work at. And the report sets out long-term opportunities for rail and tram train, linking this place to the East Coast Main Line, to the Midland Main Line and the Lincoln Line, as well as improvements to walking and cycling. This is all welcome, and I'd really encourage that the long-term planning for this starts now. We know how long transport infrastructure can take, and so getting fast public transport routes built in at an early stage is critical now, rather than being bolted on at a later stage. And I suppose in doing so, I would just say we need to learn from lessons of the past. Nearly 25 years ago, the University of Sheffield's Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre was just being established. Over a quarter of a century since then, the AMRC has transformed Waverley and the wider area, creating significant numbers of jobs in Rotherham, Sheffield and the wider region, boosted productivity and created thousands of new homes at Waverley. But it's got appalling public transport connectivity. We're working to change that now by taking the tram train there. Let's not make the same mistake again with the airport and Gateway East. Let's build in the plans for transport connectivity now so that people in 10, 20 years' time aren't looking back and thinking, why didn't that decision about public transport get taken at an early stage? So to conclude, I support Doncaster today. I support reopening the airport, support bringing an airport back to South Yorkshire to give travel and employment opportunities to all of our communities in Barnsley, Rotherham, Doncaster and Sheffield. Good jobs with good wages, more opportunities. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. And I agree with all of your comments that you made there, particularly about public transport and sustainable aviation. Indeed, I agree with all of the comments around the table. And I'm glad you agree with me and with Ros. And I'm assured it's not just because I've got a bomber behind me that we are all in agreement. So could I ask, please, that the board here is recommended to note and consider the contents of this report, including the contents of appendices 1 to 17, subject to entering into of a funding agreement as per recommendation 7, approve the funding commitment to CDC to facilitate the reopening of DSA and operation at a total level of up to £159.52 million as detailed in paragraph 3.110 and appendix 16.1 of the report. Note that £121.62 million of the funding required has been earmarked from gain share funding allocated to the City of Doncaster CDC Place Investment Plan. Note that £30 million of funding required has been earmarked from funding committed to Simca's 2026-27 integrated settlement. Note that £6 million of the funding required has been earmarked from recycled local growth fund loan funding. Note that it is proposed to redeploy £1.9 million of gain share funding from a previously agreed Doncaster-based project. Approve the MCA entering into a funding agreement with CDC on terms to be approved by the MCA Monitoring Officer in consultation with the Mayor and Chief Finance Officer that sets out the conditions, precedent and contractual controls, measures detailed in paragraph 3.100 and appendix 15 of the report. Approve the MCA being represented on the Board of Directors of Fly Doncaster Limited by 2 non-executive appointments nominated by the MCA Chief Executive, and delegate to the MCA Chief Executive in consultation with the Mayor, Chief Finance Officer and Monitoring Officer authority to certify satisfaction of the conditions precedent by CDC required under the funding agreement. Tom, are you agreed? Chris, are you agreed? Steve, are you agreed? Ros, are you agreed?
Of course I agree.
Well, I am agreed as well, in which case we have agreed the funding for DSA. Thank you very much. So, what happens next? So, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you very much to the board. We're going to close the meeting now, so the webcast will be cut in a moment. We'll then have the public stakeholders media in the room, but for a short break before we then go to some formal speeches. And I'm pleased to be able to give the speech that I have written. And then we'll then talk to the media as well. So stakeholders are welcome to stick around for any of that, all of that. We'd really appreciate it if you did want to. But if anyone needs to leave, staff will help escort you out. So again, thank you very much.